Have you ever wondered how music is selected and composed for such iconic video games as Call of Duty, or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, or any of your other favorite games? Well, if you have, then you'll definitely want to check out our featured conversation with Brandon Young, Director of Music Affairs at Activision. We discuss the special needs of scoring video games as opposed to film and television, as well as how music is used more today to drive stories in video games than ever before, and much, much more. Coming up.
This episode of the MUBUTV Insider video series is brought to you by the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much, much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source serving the music business community for over 30 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Guide, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com.
Hi, this is Ritch Esra from MUBUTV, where our mission is dedicated to artists and music business professionals who are committed to having a successful career in the music industry. We're coming to you from Muse Expo here in beautiful downtown Burbank. And we managed to catch up with Brandon Young of Activision. Brandon, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I wanted to ask you, you've been in the business a long time, and from you work in a very specific field, which is in the video game world. And I'm curious, in your view, is music used more today in terms of telling stories in video games than it was in the past?
I think we've gone through flows while I've been there. When I first started working for Activision back in 2003, it was mostly about the Tony Hawk franchise, which was heavily licensed music. You know, you had your punk rock, your hip hop, your rock, and it was kind of like really trying to hit that skate culture. And it was fun because you were putting about 100 licensed songs into a video game. These days, we're not doing it quite as much. We went through a cycle where we did the Guitar Hero franchises. Clearly, those are stacked with tons of licensed music. I mean, it was all based around licensing music. But then these days, we do like our Call of Duties. Not a lot of place for licensed music, but you have small places for licensed music in the game. Big placements in the marketing side of things. We pump out a ton of trailers. But then we all, finding a great composer to score the game is also a big challenge and a big part of that franchise.
Okay, let me ask you: at what point in the process do you start thinking about music, composers, songs that you're going to be using in the game? Is it in the creation, post? When do you start thinking about that? So
if we're talking about creating the game, we start thinking about it probably about a year and a half to 2 years in advance. I'm actually going up to San Francisco this Thursday to sit with our studio that's doing our 2020 game and talk about style, feel, what kind of composers we want to bring in, just some different directions that we might want to take. So, at this stage, I guess we're looking at a little over a year and a half out.
Okay.
For that one. Well, if you're thinking about it from a marketing perspective, timelines are a lot different. They're a lot shorter. When we're doing like our marketing campaigns, we might get a couple of weeks, a couple of weeks of being able to sort of focus on the music. But then we have plenty of promotional trailers that we'll put out that we've had to find music within like 2 days for. So timelines can be long and forgiving, or they can be crunched. It kind of depends on the project.
You mentioned you were going up to San Francisco to talk about the upcoming games. Can you sort of take us through the process of how decisions are made with regards to composers and songs creatively? I mean, what are those discussions like?
So it's funny because there's a lot of stakeholders in any piece of any sort of section of that business, right? When you're looking at the composers for the game, you're going to have the studio that builds the game very involved in that decision. You might have some of our production team from Activision Publishing headquarters that might have some involvement in that too. I'd say typically it's me sitting down with our studio to figure out what kind of style and sound that they're looking for, and then we collectively come up with some ideas and put those on the table. Then it kind of goes back to me to figure out who's going to be available, what's going to fall in line with our budgets. I've got a pretty good idea of who might fit with what kind of money we're working with. And then it's up to me to put those deals together.
Okay. Tell me what composers need to understand creatively about working with games that's distinct in terms of composition, that's distinct from film or TV or other mediums.
Well, I think the obvious is that your film and TV are linear mediums, where we're nonlinear. We're more of an open world environment, right? So if you're, say, playing Call of Duty, you've got you're a player that's just going to be walking around the environment. The sound's going to change based on the action that's going on. If you're just sitting there, it might be just stems brought down to just a few, and there's an engine that runs that. We have an audio team, typically of 7 to 10 guys at each of our development studios that really work on that implementation of figuring out how it's going to actually sound. As far as what the composer needs to know, we used to put a little more emphasis on explaining the nonlinear portion of it, but since we have this back-end team that can really support the composer, as long as they're delivering us the sound and style that we want, our team will then make the implementation work.
Okay.
For the environment.
In terms of your world at Activision, are there any particular styles of songs or sensibility of music that works for your games in particular?
I think each game treated as a brand is different. Okay. With your Call of Duties, which is obviously one of our biggest franchises and biggest hits, we've always wanted to match in our promotion. In the promotional side, we've always wanted to match an artist that sort of is the same size of our brand, that brings something to the table. So we've used some pretty big names in the campaigns. We do pump out a lot of promotional materials. So we do have opportunities for all kinds of other styles and sizes of artists. From our big campaign stuff to sort of the still known name artists, whether it's hip hop, rock or what have you, to unsigned artists. I mean, we've really hit the spectrum on all the things we can use. I feel like we produce a couple of promotional trailers a week these days, it feels like.
Wow, that's
it's a lot of material.
A lot of material.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I realized with your world that's very specific, and it's also specific to film and TV too, is getting the right people to do the kind of work that you need, the right songs. How does someone who is interested in what you're doing and the games and really is a fan, how do they get on your radar with regards to presenting material to you? Or do you have your own sources that you go to?
It's a tough question. I think at the end of the day, I have my sources that I go to that I'm already established with. I feel like in my inbox, I get a couple of hundred emails a day that might be just music or introductions or this and that, and I can't go through all that. So I have a tough time trying to field that in the email level. Even listening to the things that I just want to listen to or feel like I need to check out, it's tough to find the time. So it's hard to get through the email clutter. So I feel like I do rely on my industry colleagues and friends to steer me in the direction that might be more helpful.
Okay. Are any of those music libraries?
Lately, oftentimes, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Would you recommend artists who are interested in getting music into games or in film or television belonging to music libraries or joining up there with music libraries? Is that a great way to get on your radar?
Well, I think it would be up to the individual artist. I wouldn't want to, if they have a certain career path in mind, I wouldn't say go that direction. But I think for us, I do work with a lot of libraries because of the amount of content that we push out. From a financial level, it's also more helpful for me to be able to understand what something might cost if we're pushing out a lot of material versus licensing something from companies either I'm not familiar with or larger labels where I know that the prices are going to fluctuate quite a bit.
Right.
So that being said, I think there are cases where an up-and-coming artist might benefit from that, yeah.
Okay, yet the challenge is getting, if that's the case, then getting your attention because of the overwhelm of how somebody gets on that kind of radar. One of the things, and I'm curious for you as well, it's not just a stylistic element of music, I would think. Music supervisors have said to me, it's really important, anybody who's submitting music, that they watch the show that they're submitting for. Is it really important in your world that the person really become very familiar with the property that they're submitting this for? They really know Call of Duty. They really know what you're talking about, the video game they're talking about.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's definitely appreciated. It's definitely noticed when people do. It's also noticed when people don't. So, when you get things that are completely off-brand, it's kind of like, I really didn't need to go that direction. But I feel like at the end of the day, with a brand like that, it's pretty common sense to know sort of what might hit without even having to do a whole lot of homework. Or we've got enough trailers online where you could do a pretty minimal amount of homework to feel like you might be able to fit the brand.
Right. Okay.
Versus sending me something that's just, pop, just something that's completely off-brand. I think there's plenty of stuff out there that I've received in the past that I probably could have done without.
Yeah, it becomes a waste of time.
Right.
I want to talk to you about the transition of games. We began to speak about this earlier, about the transition of games from a physical medium to an access online medium. And the growth of games on an international level. Has that affected any of the choices that you've made creatively in the music space, knowing now that your music or your games are going into so many different cultures and areas? Does that impact how you market, or does that impact the kinds of choices you make, or is that even a factor? It's
not really a factor for us. I feel like we've always been, we've always been a global product, even before the sort of the increase of the digital distribution era. Mm-hmm. So we've always looked at it from a global aspect. When it comes to things like trailers, we do localize for global territories, but it doesn't affect the way I think about the music. We're still gonna look at that the same.
Really? Okay, so you don't take into account, like if you're doing one for Brazil or Venezuela?
We just do foreign language versions. The music stays the same globally.
You just do a foreign language version of the song?
No, sorry, just of any VO or any subtitles or what have you.
Oh, okay, of the game itself.
The music stays the same globally.
Okay,
which is something I guess is something you have to think about. Huh? I said, which I guess is something you have to think about, because you do want to use music that does have at least what you think might be a global fit.
Yeah, no, I just wondered if that came into your consciousness, considering that, you guys are a worldwide product. Do you do? I remember I asked this question because I once asked the head of music of Coca-Cola, and they do different, stuff for Venezuela, stuff
a lot of
for
companies
England,
do.
stuff for Greece, completely different music and stuff for that particular territory. I didn't know if you marketed video games in that way.
But I feel like from my standpoint, I think about our biggest markets, which are U.S., North America. US/North America, UK coming in second, and then you've got different territories in Europe. France, Germany are always up there. So you just think about music that's going to work for your big territories, and then you kind of just let the rest go.
Okay.
Yeah.
For someone who's interested in pursuing a career in music supervision, let's say for games, they're passionate about that field. What pieces of advice would you have for somebody who wants to, let's say, follow in your footsteps, get into that particular arena, which is very distinct from films or from television or commercials? It
is very distinct, and I don't think there's a ton of opportunities out there. When I started my position, the position didn't exist. We were hired, me and a partner of mine were hired as a third party by a developer 16 years ago to music supervise one of the Tony Hawk games from that franchise. And while we were doing that, we actually pitched to Activision to start a department in-house. EA had just done the same. It seemed like the timing was right. It seemed like the industry was healthy and going in the right direction. And we were fortunate enough to be able to spearhead that. And for me, it's now been 16 years that I've been, just under 16 years that I've been in-house at the company.
Wow. I mean, that's a long time. And you've obviously seen the growth.
Yeah. So I think my advice would be keep an eye out on some of the up-and-coming companies. When Riot Games came out a few years ago, they were the new kid on the block, and they exploded with League of Legends, and were able to create, we're able to build a big company and create a big campus and create new departments where sometimes once people get in those roles, they tend to stick around for a while. But that would be my piece of advice. Look for something that's new to the market.
Okay. What pieces of advice would you have for composers who are looking to get into scoring for video games, in particular, which is your world?
I think for the advice I'd give to composers is have a good agent. I tend to lean towards my agents to figure out who I might want to work with. Who they help me at least know who's going to fit what I'm looking for, who's going to be available. So yeah, I think find yourself a good agent.
Okay, so good representation.
That's right.
Great insights from Brandon, especially for all of you looking to get a better understanding of the world of video games and placing your music into them. So, insiders, here's the question of the day. From this video, what were the most informative things that Brandon spoke about? Was it how music is used more today to drive the narrative in video games than in the past? Or was it the understanding of the special needs of scoring a video game as opposed to a film or TV show? Or was it learning the best way to get on his radar to learn his musical needs? Or perhaps it was something else. We'd love to hear from you and connect in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to MUBUTV for more information on how to educate, empower, and engage your music career. You can also check out a summary of this episode and everything we talked about in the description below as well. And if you enjoyed this video, we'd really love it if you hit the like button and let us know what other kinds of videos and types of content you want to see on our channel. Hit us up in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.